On the roof of Navin Field.
That, among other places. You see, I was all over the place. See, I was, it was like, actually, I was at Navin Field more than I was at home.
When did you start working there?
Well, I couldn't call it work because I picked up pop bottles so I could get a pass for the next day.
Well, that was your pay for picking up pop bottles?
That went on for the whole summer. And then the next summer I did it again, and he asked me if I wanted to sell pop.
How old were you?
I was 13.
Wow.
So I started selling pop there, and I was making $4 or $5 for an afternoon. That was big money in those days, because it lasted me all week, you know, for my spending money.
So did you ever ask anybody for change?
Frank Navin, I didn't know it was him.
How did the story happen? You're working?
Well, he was standing there watching the first baseman. And yeah, he was behind first base. There were the little causeway. They call it a vomitorium where everybody spills out.
Oh, jeez.
He was standing there holding onto the rail. I figured it was another guy waiting for a seat. And I'd sold something, and I had to give the guy change. I didn't have change. So I asked him if he could change $1. So he looked at me, and some guy grabs me by the arm. And he pulls me over, and he says, "Do you know who that is?" He says, "Who's that?" He says, "That's Frank Navin." Anyway,
wow.
He had a brother-in-law named, his name was Vince. So what he did, he turned the confession over to Vince. So it actually working for the family, because Vince was married to his, but he was a redneck from the word go, and you know, every other word, you know, he spit out of his mouth. So then later on, I worked there over a couple of years, 3 years. Then I sold lemonade. So one day I come in, I says, "Vince," I'd known him by that time. I called him Vince, that's his brother-in-law. I says, "The people are complaining the lemonade tastes too much like water." He says, "It's good for him. Lemon will make them nervous." These are some of the things that went on, you know. Eventually, he turned it over to two brothers from New York, and they made so much money that they gave Frank Navin did. He never considered it money, you know, because he's doing his brother-in-law a favor. But they made, then these two guys made so much money, they bought the Cleveland Indians.
Oh, be darned.
So, you know, I go through all this baseball thing besides the people that I knew, Babe Ruth,
what was
Heidi Manouche.
Was Ty Cobb as big of an SOB as everyone says? Or
Pardon?
Was Ty Cobb as big of an SOB as everyone used to say?
We had a pitcher by the name of Schoolboy Rowe. And I don't know that he was jealous because Schoolboy Rowe was getting more publicity in the paper from him. So he kept finding fault with him. And he kept putting him, you know, in different spots. And he actually beat up on him one day.
Physically?
Oh, yeah, physically. Ty Cobb was rough.
Wow.
He was mean. He didn't fool around with anybody.
So how did you happen to get Babe Ruth to autograph your baseballs?
It was nothing. We both lived in the same place. He played there and I worked there, so it was that simple.
Did you had complete access to where the players went and everything?
I'd walk to I'd go to the dugouts there, you know, when they were practicing, and I'd walked around there. You know, it's a different life, you know. It's like, you know, you're part of the scenery, that's all.
So you actually had conversations with all of these people?
Oh, yeah.
It's not like you just ran into them in the parking lot and said, you saw them on a daily basis.
Right there, you know, I'd pass them when they were practicing, you know, and the gates hadn't opened yet.
How did you happen to end up on the roof of Navin Field?
Just exploring. I just walked around, you know, and I walked all over the place. It was like I wanted to see what's behind this. I wanted to know where the store went to. I went to a street on the back of it. Nobody knew the name of it. Anybody asked me, I told them it was National. That was the name of the street. The other street going up and down was Cherry Street. What they did when they won the World Series, they didn't win the World Series in '34. They played in '34 against the St. Louis Cardinals, and they had two pitchers, Dizzy Dean and Daffy Dean. And they were murderous. You couldn't beat them. They were a tough combination to beat. So when they won the World Series, they needed more seats, so they tore down the wall and closed up Cherry Street and put benches on Cherry Street.
Wow.
And when the World Series was over, they took the seats off and built the wall back up.
Oh, I'll be darned.
And at that time, we had a player by the name of Hank Greenberg.
Yes.
And he was always having in conflict because he was Jewish. And when the holiday would roll around, he wouldn't play.
Oh, really? He didn't?
Yeah.
Well, not on Yom Kippur. He wouldn't play on
Yom Kippur, he wouldn't play it. So they wrote all about that, and everybody learned about Yom Kippur from Hank Greenberg.
I'll be darned. Well,
And
he was a great...
then what's his name? The Free Press had a poem, a very famous poem. Guy that wrote poetry he became but he wrote a poem that ended. But he's true to his religion. I respect a man for that.
Everybody respected him.
Huh?
But that was
Everybody respected that.
that was the last line of the poem?
Yeah, but he wrote the plays, but he's true to his religion. I respect the man for that. Well, then Hank Greenberg broke his arm in a subsequent World Series, and he couldn't play. So Navin, says, fix his arm. A guy with a broken arm, go to pitch, go to play ball. Oh, I could tell you a million stories that happened there.
Oh, that's great. Well,
We used to, I'll tell you, my cousin Mac was, you met him, of course. You worked for him. So he used to like to shoot crap, so he shot crap after each game. And sometimes he'd win pretty big. Now we were very lucky.
Who did he play with? Players or the other employees of the
No,
neighborhood?
just other people, other guys that sold peanuts and sold the guys that sold.
Yeah, the concession
They
people.
had their own crap game.